Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I will show you how to make this beautiful dress. This dress is not for beginners, but if you like to learn how to make more advanced dresses, I think this tutorial will be helpful for you. And as always, if you're interested in the pattern, you have the link in the description box. So for this dress, I'm using regular suit fabric, but you can use satin or PU leather or any fabric that is not stretchy. So I start with interfacing the fabric for the top parts. So all of the top parts and the ruffle part should be interfaced. As you can see, I put the main fabric wrong side up and then put the interfacing on it and then just press. You can also use an iron for this step. So here I'm placing the ruffle piece and just cutting it out. Here are all of the top pieces. So I use the same fabric for the lining as for the face. And here are the skirt pieces. As you can see, I did not interface the fabric for the skirt. So pin and sew together the lining pieces and also the face. So just place the fabric and then make a straight stitch all the way down. The seam allowance is 1 centimeter. This step is only for the lining piece. You should take one side of the seam allowance and then cut it down because we're going to create some boning channels. And now you have one long and one short seam allowance. So put that long seam allowance over the short one and then place the piece under the needle and make a straight stitch all the way down at 5 to 6 millimeters from the original seam. So just stop stitch it all the way down. And this is how it should look like. And please remember, you should only do this step on the lining. And this is the face of the top. So I just press that seam open and repeat it for all of the seams. And for the curvy parts of the top, I'm using the bra pressing hem. And after I've pressed all of the seams open, I'm making small cuts on the curvy areas on the seam allowance. And this is how the face and the lining of the top should look like at this point. And now it's time for the strap. So put those two details face towards face and pin them together. and then sew them together with seam allowance, 1 centimeter seam allowance. And after you sew them together, cut down the seam allowance to 5 millimeters. And now turn that strap right side out. And then press the strap so it's flat. Now it's time to sew together the face and the lining. So place those face towards face and then add the strap in between them. So I add the strap to the back, and the start point is the nearest boning channel to the center of the back. And before pinning the other side of the strap, double check so it's turned the right way. And I also recommend you try the top on at this point. Pin the top parts together and then try so you can see that the length of the strap fits you. And after you've pinned those together, just sew them together using a straight stitch, and the seam allowance is 1 centimeter. And at this point, make small cuts on the seam allowance on the curvy areas. Now turn the seam allowance towards the lining and understitch at 1 to 2 millimeters from the original seam, and start the stitch at 3 to 4 centimeters from the side. So turn the top wrong side out and then cut down the seam allowance. As you can see, I don't touch the seam allowance at the corners because there will be another seam there. We will install the zipper. And now turn the garment right side out and press. And now it's time to work on the skirt. So glue on the fusible stay tape using an iron on the areas where you will install the invisible zipper. And here I'm measuring 25 centimeters and cut it down. Now sew the darts on the skirt. And now press the darts. So I usually press the dart closed and then turn to the side. I usually turn the darts to the center of the back. And now search the sides of the skirt and the centers. Here is the back pieces. So you see that I've searched the sides and the center part. And here are the front pieces. Also search the sides of the pieces. So the next step is only for these areas of the skirt. Right here I'm taking some glue and put it inside and then folding that edge about 1 centimeter. And now just press that part to glue those parts together. You do not have to do this step. You can just press that edge down, but it makes it much easier to glue it first. And now to secure everything, I make a top stitch at 1 to 2 millimeters from the edge. And this is how it should look like when done. And now I'm making the folds on the front piece. And I always do this from the right side of the pattern. This way your folds will face the right side. And after you're done pinning, just serge that edge. And right here you can see that I'm putting the threads inside of the seam. Don't just cut it down. Put those threads inside the seam. And before connecting it with the back pieces, just press those folds. Do not go all the way out, just that seam. And now it's time to connect the skirt pieces. So put the back pieces face up and then put detail 8, the front piece, over it, face towards face, and then put detail 9 over detail 8, also face towards face to the back pieces. So pin those details together on the sides. You can also sew together the pieces at the top. So sew the pieces together using a straight stitch with 1 centimeter seam allowance and then press the seams open. And it's finally time to connect the top with the skirt. So I take the face of the top and pin it together with the skirt at the waistline. I start pinning the pieces at the sides. So find the side of the top and find the side of the skirt and put the pins there, and then you can continue with the rest of the waistline. And now sew them together with a straight stitch at 1 centimeter from the edge. After you sew them together, press the seam allowance towards the skirt and then serge the seam allowance. I forgot to do this step, but I had to redo it. And now it's time to install the invisible zipper. So I take the zipper and start pinning it from the top of the corset. Do not touch the lining yet. So just the top of the corset and then go all the way down. And before I start to pin the other side of the zipper, I'm checking so the waistline will be on the same level for both sides. So here you can see that I found the waistline on the one side and then pinning the other side on the same level from the other side of the zipper. And here I'm double checking so the lines are on the same level, and then open up the zipper and pin the other side. And this is how it should look like pinned. I'm using this type of invisible zipper foot, but they can look different, so whatever fits you. And then just sew that zipper on. And now it's a perfect time to double check so all of the lines are on the same level. The line at the top, the waistline, and at the bottom. Pin together the rest of that center of the back and then sew it together with 1 centimeter seam allowance. And here at the area near to the zipper, you have to be careful. So I haven't found a way to make that stitch very close to the zipper. So I make this stitch and then try to go as near, and then I will hand stitch the rest. So here you can see that I couldn't go all the way up. So I'm just taking a needle and hand stitch the rest of that opened area. And now I'm just pressing that seam open. And before connecting the face with the lining, I put the boning inside the boning channels at the lining, and I cut the boning down at around 1 to 1.5 centimeters shorter than the boning channel is. And after you added the boning, you have to serge that waistline on the lining. And now connect the lining with the face of the top at the sides. So just turn the top inside out and then pin at the area where you have the zipper. Make sure that the ends of the zipper are inside the top. And when you sew that stitch, go as near as possible as the original stitch, the stitch that you've connected the zipper onto the top. And for the other side, for you to be able to see the original stitch, you have to turn the dress upside down. And now you have to cut down the seam allowance on the side and the corner, and then turn the dress right side out. And now pin together the lining to the waistline. Sew that waistline together and also use the original stitch that you stitched the main part with the skirt with as the guideline for this stitch. And you will not be able to start from the edge, so just go 1 or 2 centimeters from the edge. As you can see here, there is a small opening at the edge. This is the opening that I'm talking about. So just hand stitch that part of the waistline. And now you have to serge the bottom of the skirt, and then repeat the same step as we did for the front pieces. Serge and then fold in the edge at 1 centimeter, glue, and then make a straight stitch at 1 to 2 millimeters from the edge. And the final part of this pattern is the ruffle. So take the 2 ruffle pieces and put them together face towards face, and then pin them together. And after you've pinned them together, you have to mark a 10 centimeters opening. So this part you will not sew. You will sew around the ruffle, but not that part. I also make the marks on the edges, so it will be easier for me to see where to make that stitch at the ends. So after you've sewn them together with 1 centimeter seam allowance, turn it right side out and then cut down the seam allowance at the pointed areas. And then press the ruffle all the way around, and around that opening area you have to put the seam allowance inside and then press, and try to make this area as straight as possible, because we have to hand stitch it now, so it's good if it fits the rest of the ruffle, the rest of that line. And now close that opening by hand stitching. Now measure a mark at 13 centimeters from the edge. That will be the start point of the elastic band. And then measure the middle of that ruffle. So we will have a straight line where we will add the elastic band. So 13 centimeters from the edge, and then in the middle of that ruffle. And then repeat the same step at the other end of the ruffle. So 13 centimeters from the edge on both edges, and then the middle of the ruffle. And here you can see that straight line in the middle of the ruffle. And now take the elastic band and straighten it out to make sure that you can reach both edges. Now mark the center of the ruffle and then make another mark in between the start of that line and the center, and repeat that step on the other side. So in total you should have 5 marks at that line that you made in the middle of the ruffle, and then repeat the same step at the elastic band. So add a pin in the center of the elastic band, and then fold that edge, and then add a pin in between the end of the elastic band and the center. So here you also have 5 points on that elastic band. So pin together the center of the elastic band and the center of the ruffle, and then connect the other marks. So now you can see that the ruffle and the elastic band are connected at 5 points. Now start sewing together or sewing on that elastic band to the ruffle. and I make it with a straight stitch. So when you're sewing them together, pull on the elastic band so it is straightened when you make that stitch. And here you have both of the ruffles. So the only thing left is to connect the ruffle to the dress. And now fold the strap in half and add a pin. And then repeat the same step for the ruffle piece. So find the middle of that ruffle and then add a pin. And now you should connect the strap and the ruffle at that point where you added the pin. Just make sure to pin that ruffle to one side of the strap. So here you can see that I'm pinning it near the edge of the strap, because we will add the other ruffle to the other side of the strap. And then go all the way down with the pins at the strap and then at the dress. You can try the dress on to see where you want to put those ends. And this is how it looks like after you've pinned all of the ruffle to the dress. And as you can see, to one side of the strap. And now I'm sewing on the ruffle to the dress. So I'm using a straight stitch, and if you notice that your needle breaks all the time, then you should change the needle to a thicker one. And now repeat the same step for the other piece of the ruffle. So pin it on the other side of the strap and then sew it on. And it is harder to add that other ruffle piece because you have a lot of fabric in the way, but be patient and take your time. So the dress is now done. If you're worried about that elastic band showing through, then just make it the same color as your dress is. So thank you guys so much for watching, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you have any questions, just add them in the comments. I always answer the questions. Thank you and bye.